Control. Brawlers, those brawlers that simply, control. I mean, yeah, it sounds super mega redundant, but the main function of control brawlers is to control the map. This is because the abilities that each of these brawlers have prevent enemies from passing through certain areas, whether it's with a projectile or an area of effect. This gives your allies an advantage or puts your opponents at a disadvantage, and sometimes just their presence is enough, since these brawlers deal a lot of damage. So yes, control brawlers come in different forms and types. And the truth is that these brawlers become essential in Brawl Stars, especially in game modes like Gem Grab, Brawl Ball, and Hot Zone, mainly in game modes that depend on holding an area and not letting your opponent take it from you. Are all these brawlers really that essential? You might be wondering which one is the best of all. Today we'll find out, because today we're going to look at control brawlers, from the worst to the best of them all. But anyway, before we start, you already know that this ranking is an objective opinion. Yes! We're going to talk about how the brawler has been historically. We're not going to base it on the current meta, but instead we'll look at the entire history of the brawler and how it has performed over time. Because as you know, sometimes brawlers end up getting ultra mega nerfed, they end up being unplayable, or they get buffed and become the best in the world. Also, just to be clear, I'm the one making this ranking. So yeah, that's that. And if you have a different opinion, well, leave it in the comments. There's no problem. So, with all that said, let's start with what I think is the worst control brawler in the whole game. This is a bit sad, yes, but the worst control brawler is none other than Chuck. A brawler who interestingly works quite well in Heist. Yes, but other than that, no, he doesn't work in any other game mode. Even though Chuck's gameplay is about controlling thanks to his super and the signals he can place. This brawler deals a lot of damage thanks to his super, since if he runs you over, he would do 4,000 points of damage, which is not a small amount. This, with targets that don't move or are very simple, like the safe and Heist, can be extremely overpowered. And if you manage to hit more than once, Chuck definitely deals a ton of damage. But what happens in the other game mode? In the other game modes, since the action can be concentrated in different parts of the map, Chuck definitely has a big disadvantage here. Because even though he can recharge his super over time, he's a brawler who really depends on having his super charged and having a clear direction for where to use it. Because, well, if the opponent doesn't go through where your super is, then you're not gonna deal any damage. Since Chuck's basic attack is actually just a basic attack, well, it's very simple up to a certain point. It's something that mostly just supports the brawler. It's not what you're going to use to deal all the damage. The star powers, gadgets, and hypercharge of this brawler are honestly kind of meh. It's not like they make a big difference or completely change how the brawler is played, which actually makes Chuck a pretty weak brawler. Therefore, this brawler is the worst control brawler of them all. But moving on to number 19 on this list, we continue with another brawler that honestly has rarely been in the meta. Yes, we're talking about none other than Amber. A brawler that has control traits thanks to her super and her basic attacks. Once Amber catches you with her basic attack, she won't let you go unless you get behind a wall. Which almost always means that Amber ends up getting kills. The fire caused by her super also does a lot of damage. Since for most brawlers, if they get hit by both Amber's fire and her basic attack, it's a guaranteed kill. But you might be wondering, then if both things could guarantee a kill, why the heck is Amber ranked so low? Well, what I'm telling you actually only works in lower trophy ranges, or with people who aren't that experienced in the game. Most people would just get as close as possible to an Amber and finish her off. That's how simple it is to kill an Amber, since Amber struggles a lot against brawlers like assassins and tanks. Amber has a lot of counters, and yes, Amber's advantages are more noticeable at or long or medium distances. Honestly, her star powers and gadgets aren't anything special. Maybe the strongest thing about this brawler is her hypercharge, which almost fills the entire map. So yes, Amber is in 19th place. Continuing with our next brawler in 18th place. We have a brawler with a unique trait in Brawl Stars. Our next brawler is Willow. The only brawler in the whole game who has mind control. Maybe a lot of people think this brawler should be with the throwers or artillery. But no, this is because Willow's mind control prevents many brawlers from passing through certain areas, making her perfect for game modes like Brawl Ball. Using mind control on your opponent is one of the trolliest things in the world, and scoring goals with this is actually pretty fun. And yes, mind control might sound like a completely broken idea, because with this, you can control any brawler, which is insanely overpowered, and almost always winning the PvPs. But anyway, aside from that mind control, honestly, Willow doesn't really stand out that much. She has a basic attack that poisons. The poison mechanic can also be pretty annoying. But on the other hand, her star powers and gadgets really aren't all that great, to be honest. And actually, the mind control mechanic of this brawler is so necessary that her hypercharge only makes you invincible while using mind control. I mean, it doesn't really give you a big advantage, unless you're in Showdown. In other game modes, honestly, it's not that useful. So yeah, the combination of throwers with control brawlers actually wasn't that great in this case, and Willow stays at number 18 on this list. Moving on to number 17. We have a brawler who, interestingly, has been one of the weakest brawlers in the history of the game. This brawler is none other than Mr. P, a brawler who has been in Brawl Stars for quite a while now. And interestingly, there haven't been many times when this brawler has been really overpowered or part of the meta. It already happened with his hypercharges with reworks they made to his star powers. P hasn't really managed to establish himself in the meta. But, well, right now Mr. P is a brawler that's honestly kind of worth playing. He works quite well in game modes like Heist, Bounty, or Knockout. In these modes, snipers usually dominate a lot. P can actually counter these brawlers quite well. Yes, whenever this brawler enters the meta or ends up being really good. Supercell ends up nerfing him and he ends up being total trash. Curiously, this brawler is a case where the hypercharge actually nerfs him. Because the hypercharge makes the penguins die over time. Honestly, that really nerfs the brawler a lot. What you really want is for the penguins to last as long as possible, and for them to have enough health to tank a hit or two. But well, that's just Supercell things. Maybe someday they'll buff this hypercharge. But knowing Supercell, most likely they'll end up killing Mr. P again because he just can't find his place in the meta. But anyway, leaving Mr. P aside, let's move on to our next brawler. In 16th place, what goes to Siggy. Another brawler that many consider a thrower, but Supercell put him in the control category. Why? I don't know. Well, this brawler has really good control, thanks to his super, and also his basic attacks. Yes, Siggy's basic attacks are extremely annoying. Maybe they're not the basic attacks that do the most damage in the game right now. Maybe his super also isn't one that does a ton of damage, but it covers a huge area, which makes the opponents have to move away once he uses his super. Also, keep in mind that he has a gadget that chases opponents, and that's extremely annoying. Well, you can make some really cool plays with Siggy, and his hypercharge is on another level. The hypercharge makes his super last much longer, and even though this brawler is a recent addition, the truth is that he also has the disadvantage of struggling a lot against assassins and tanks. Well, these brawlers have become very prominent in the meta, and people use them a lot. That's why he ends up in such a low spot. This brawler hasn't established himself in any way, but maybe in the future, for some reason, Supercell might end up buffing this brawler, and he could become really good. But until that happens, he'll stay in the number 16 spot on this list. Moving on to number 15 here, I'm going to give a strong opinion. Well, XXD. But I think Sirius is actually a super overrated brawler. Sirius takes the number 15 spot on this list. Why? Well, because when he was released, Sirius was really strong. I won't deny that to anyone, but once they finished nerfing this brawler, who still uses him? I mean, aside from using him in events where his shadows are still super strong, who else keeps using him? The thing is, Sirius actually has a disadvantage. The shadows are really just a whisper. Now, they don't do much damage anymore. They don't have much health. Charging them is honestly pretty tedious. And while a good Sirius could manage to charge up quite a few shadows, the truth is you could get rid of them easily. And even though the shadows are also a big advantage, well, they end up tanking a hit or two. If your opponent has a brawler that does area damage or does a lot of damage and ends up killing you, then the shadows just disappear. And in reality, everything you did was for nothing. Like I mentioned, it actually ended up being an overrated brawler. And like I said, nowadays, who even plays him? Moving on to number 14 on this list, we have a brawler that many consider useless, but I think is actually a good brawler. This brawler is Sandy. A brawler that many people consider to be a copy of a copy of a copy. And honestly, this brawler gets a lot of hate because he isn't a brawler that deals a lot of damage. He's not a brawler with an ultimate that's super destructive either. Honestly, he's a brawler that's played mostly in team compositions, and we could even consider him a support brawler to some extent. Yes, because Sandy's main role isn't really to deal damage, but to support. Thanks to his ultimate, his teammates can catch many enemies by surprise. And this is what ends up making this brawler really good. If you combine this brawler with another one that's really overpowered and can deal a lot of damage in a short time, thanks to the invisibility, well, the enemies don't have time to react, and he ends up getting a triple kill, but it's thanks to you. Plus, he also has gadgets that can really help you, either to keep you from getting killed or to help your teammates, so they can make some really good plays. His star powers also complement his ultimate really well. Thanks to them, you can either deal damage by throwing it at enemies, or you can heal your teammates, which is really good, and the hypercharge is even better, giving everyone a lot of speed. And it also makes the enemies get silenced for a pretty short period of time. Yes, but it gives you a really big advantage. Adding all this up, Sandy is actually a brawler. He's not one of the most destructive brawlers in the whole game, but he's a brawler that's really worth it. Of course, this brawler has always ended up being very underrated by the community. Speaking of underrated brawlers, moving on to number 13, we have Finks. Finks is also a brawler who has an area of effect that can nerf enemies and buff allies. But it also depends a lot on your team's composition. Because, well, if your allies don't have any brawlers with projectiles, then you're out of luck, right? I mean, it's not gonna help you at all. If the opponents have a brawler like MZ who benefits from Finks' super, then that's a problem. Well, then Finks won't be any use to you either. This can also be a double-edged sword. But if we had the right composition and played this brawler in the best way possible, believe me, this brawler could cause a lot of destruction. Honestly, it's a brawler with pretty solid gameplay, and maybe it's not ranked higher simply because it hasn't been in the meta very often. The truth is, people really underestimate him. Moving on to number 12 in this video, we start with those brawlers that are in the middle ground. They're not overpowered, but they're not very weak either. In the number 12 spot, we have Jessie. One of those brawlers that's honestly a staple brawler in Brawl Stars. The fact that you have to handle turrets is something you really learn with Jessie. The positioning of a good turret with this brawler can really mess up your opponent, whether you place it behind a wall. And that way, the opponent has to go all the way around. And well, with the turret there, it really is a pain. The turret can also be used as a desperation button to deal a lot more damage. It can also be useful in game modes like Heist, where dealing constant damage to the safe is really valuable. Honestly, Jessie is a brawler that works pretty well. But the main counters for this brawler are throwers, since brawlers like Dynamite can make the turret disappear in seconds, and also some tanks. They can also make the turret disappear in seconds. But aside from that, Jessie is actually a pretty average brawler, you know? Not really good or bad. It's not like she's always overpowered, and it's not like she's always weak. It's just a matter of knowing how to play her. Anyway, continuing with these brawlers that are very average, we have Jean, a brawler who he's always a really good option for game modes like Knockout, Bounty, and Wipeout. Game modes where getting kills is really important. This brawler has a lot of range. Jean is a brawler who can deal consistent chip damage, thanks to that same range. Maybe it's not the highest damage in the world, but Jean is actually really good for zoning pretty effectively. If you pair him with a vision gear, his basic attack can reveal a pretty big area, which gives you a huge advantage over your opponents. It's a really annoying combination, and honestly, it's usually very useful. On top of that, we also have his super, the hand. A hand that can help you turn games around, even in gem grab. If you pull someone who has all the gems, oh my god, it's just amazing, this brawler. Maybe Jean's weakest point is the fact that his star powers, his gadgets, and his hypercharge aren't the most overpowered things in the world. But if we look at his basic gameplay, what this brawler can do is pretty good, and it can help in many game modes. So Jean takes a middle spot. Not good, not bad. And our next brawler is also a pretty average brawler, and this spot goes to none other than Charlie. Speaking of Charlie's mechanics, this brawler has a basic attack that's similar to Carl's. I mean, it's just one. And well, while you're doing this, you can't attack in any other way. And this could make Charlie actually end up being a Pontrayo Agataño and a pretty defenseless brawler, since it's a brawler that deals damage gradually. You can't empty a magazine in a short period of time, but what really helps Charlie is that thanks to his super, you can prevent the opponent from dealing damage. And in fact, you can prevent the opponent from doing anything else, since Charlie's super incapacitates the opponent, making them just stand there on the map. And well, someone could break his cocoon. Yes, but that's easier said than done. Also, Charlie's little spiders help him move around the map quite a bit. And well, interestingly, this brawler also has a hypercharge, which is just whatever. Pretty useless, man. Supercell, come on. 3 spiders, but that's why Charlie is also kind of in the middle. I mean, he's a brawler. You can get a lot out of. Charlie is in spot number 10. In spot number 9, we have one of the most annoying control brawlers, and honestly, I really don't like him. But he's actually pretty useful. This brawler is none other than Squeak, a brawler who has one of the most annoying gadgets in the whole game. This gadget slows you down, which can make you take more than one of Squeak's basic attacks. He has one of the most damaging supers in the whole game, if you know how to aim it and land all the hits. Well, Squeak is a brawler that can really mess you up. And this brawler applies map control in a very oppressive way. As we all know, Squeak's mines are something that really restrict the enemy's movement, since they cover a pretty large area. And they also explode after a set amount of time, which makes them really annoying. A lot of times when you're up against a Squeak, you have... But this brawler actually has a pretty big weakness, and that's that he has no way to escape if someone catches him in close combat. This is something that really makes this brawler struggle. If he had a way to get away from opponents, he would probably be over... Alright, let's continue with number 8 on this list. In the 8th spot, we have Lou. At first, he was actually a very underrated brawler. Back then, a lot of people considered him a bad brawler. But as time has gone by, he has established himself as a brawler that's actually really worth it. Since this brawler has the freezing ability, a stun that can be charged over time thanks to his basic attacks and his super. This often guarantees that you end up taking out an opponent, since if they spend enough time in his super, or if you hit them with enough basic attacks. Well, once the opponents are frozen, they won't have anywhere to go, either because Lou is going to deal damage to them or simply because your teammates will have them served up on a silver platter to deal damage. Also, his super has this slippery effect, which makes escaping from it almost impossible in most cases. And on top of that, his gadgets and star powers and the hypercharge complements this freezing mechanic really well, making the freezing unbearable in many cases, and a well-played Lou can be one of the most unbearable things in the whole game, making him a brawler who definitely deserves the number 8 spot in this video. Moving on to number 7 in this ranking, we have one of the most annoying control brawlers as well. We have Gale, a brawler with some pretty interesting abilities and quite different from what other control brawlers have. Gale's basic attacks can actually do a lot of damage on their own, but what really stands out about this brawler is his super. His super pushes enemies back, which might sound like something that's not useful, like something completely useless that doesn't do anything. Well, it actually works, because the area where his super hits is pretty big, allowing you to push back many opponents at once. And this is perfect for game modes like Brawl Ball. If the opponent is coming with the ball, you just use your super. And that's it. You don't have to worry about them anymore. And actually, Gale has pretty solid gameplay that gives him a bit more mobility. Yes. Or they can also prevent melee brawlers from getting too close to him. His 2 star powers are actually star powers that are pretty annoying. And his hypercharged super. And if his regular super wasn't enough, this brawler also has that. Well, his hypercharged super makes it bigger and gives him 2. This makes Gale the terror of those brawlers who attack in close combat, because there's really no way to beat a Gale. Beating a Gale in close combat is almost impossible. But anyway, leaving Gale aside, let's move on to our number 6 spot in this video with our next brawler, which is Griff. A brawler who, oh my god, is one of the highest damage control brawlers in the game. Griff is a brawler who at first was considered by many to be trash. But nowadays, thanks to all the abilities this brawler has, he has become a really overpowered brawler. And let's see, this brawler is synonymous with insane damage. Both his basic attacks and his super are things that can wipe you out in a second. If you try to get close to this brawler in close combat, consider yourself dead in most cases, especially since this brawler has buffs. The truth is that his gameplay is pretty solid right now. Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that his abilities by themselves were already very strong, or that they can actually deal a ton of damage. In fact, this brawler's hypercharge is one of the hypercharges that deals the most damage in the game. It's also one of the hypercharges that charges up the fastest. And interestingly, he can cycle it super after super after super after super with the hypercharge, which makes Griff a killing machine. He becomes a pretty viable option and one of the best control brawlers in the game. Continuing in the top 5 control brawlers, we have Meeple, a brawler that many pro players get a lot of value out of. He's a brawler with one of the most unique gameplays, more creative and challenging in all of Brawl Stars. This is despite his basic attack having auto-IM. As we all know, Meeple has the ability to make his basic attacks go through walls in a specific area. Honestly, this do ti di te se aprecian de casecote se no te que te recuerda que te todo te dice tú que mueren te todo puedes tener pero siempre sí nada punta que a ti na pasa te tienes te pero que te quieren que te diga esta de ser leteroti que el donde que quieres ser para te que te tiene el press y se te termina atacar te no tener pegar no ser para esta suplente te se lo que quiere que decir le ton dice loterín muy te la destaca santa que es poder este del olor que entonces se te cura te doy se te tiro ti que yo te que ti no te se puede ser una tanta carente do que será por delante y no crin hasta que son neta caminante si se que to start with, Bow's basic attack covers a huge area, aggressive, and either cover a lot of space point and deal a ton of damage. I mean, dealing 3000 damage per basic attack is no small thing. Plus, it has a pretty good range. Opponents. This brawler has one attack obviamente, which also makes him really good in many situations. And this brawler can control the map thanks to his ultimate, which, as we all know, 3 mines that he drops. These mines prevent opponents from passing through certain predetermined spots. Obviously, if your opponent is a bit smarter and has some brain cells, then obviously they're not gonna go where the mines are, or they'll trigger the mines one by one. But honestly, this really slows down the opponent. So if you're smart enough to see them getting close to the mines, you can just throw a basic attack or 2 at them to make the opponents fall into the mines. Since the fact that opponents fall into the mines almost always means a kill. This is thanks to this brawler's star powers. Also, this brawler is a brawler who can work in a lot of team compositions. This is also thanks to his gadget, which lets allies charge there super pretty quickly. And since the hypercharge, well, the fact of having 2 packs of mines makes this brawler a very oppressive control brawler in Brawl Stars. That's why Bow takes the number 3 spot in this ranking. But anyway, moving on to number 2 with the silver medal. We have a brawler that many of you might be wondering, what the heck? What is this brawler doing here? In second place, we have Penny. Now, before you grab your torches and say, this brawler doesn't deserve to be here. Seriously, let me explain. This brawler basically plays... Look, if you put the motor and throw it in the dumbest way possible, the motor is going to be one of the most annoying things in all of Brawl Stars, because this fires constantly. And if we amplified the deal, small and honestly, amplified damage thanks to the hypercharge. Honestly, Penny's mortar is stop there. She has a you want to get close to Penny and try to 30 seconds, making Penny and Brawler can't stay far from each other. Mortar, Penny attack and her mortar, but she can deal a lot of area damage. To be honest, she's really worth it. We have, of course, one of the most broken control brawlers in all of Brawl Stars. And, well, this is none other than... Let's see, you might say that the brawler is broken just because they're against... Oh, I am. Overall, this brawler is one of the highest to compete most brawlers. First of all, this brawler is damage. In M's range, you're almost guaranteed to end up Brawler or the Brawler. M's will take you away. Second requires third game. Is basically a textbook gadget-dependent brawler. And then get up close and stick to her gadget. You can prevent enemies from rushing you. The only real global disadvantage has is maybe I'm always going to be there. And that's why she takes the number 1 spot. And otherwise, is going to be worth it. So you can go check it out. Plus,